Hey guys, welcome to this month's YouTube video. Shaunee Brandon here, and we're going to get into a conversation today that I'm pretty excited about. I am going to be talking about introverts, but not just introverts in ministry. I kind of feel like this isn't really talked about enough or dealt with enough, and I've had some recent inspiration that has brought this topic on, and I just want to briefly talk about it with you all today. But before I go any further, I'm Shaunee Brandon. Welcome to my channel. Maybe you stumbled on this channel. Maybe somebody sent you the video. However you got here, I'm happy you're here, and I'm asking you to subscribe while you're here. To subscribe, to stay a little bit, to watch some of my other videos. And if you're saying, well, who are you? What do you do? I started this channel as an extension to my blog at www.shauneebrandon.com. The Prayers and Punchlines blog is how I initially started. But I wanted to create a channel that was dedicated to my relationship with God, all things spiritual, and create something that was solely for that purpose. And so that is how this channel has come along. But in addition to blogging, writing, doing a channel, I am also an entrepreneur. And I have a website, www.thesbbrand.com, where you can buy fashionable clothing, accessories, custom attire, faith merchandise. All of it is there, and I would love for you to benefit from it and take advantage. And so now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, I want to talk today about the topic of introverts in ministry. And you might be saying, well, how did that even come along? And I am going to tell you how it came along, okay? And so just to give you a quick backstory, believe it or not, and contrary to popular belief, I am an introvert. And I think there's levels to being an introvert, and there's reasons people are introverts. Some people are born that way, and that's just the way they are. Some of them are that way because of the parents they have or their birth order. It's all sorts of reasons why people are introverts, but there's different varying levels. You know, let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a level 7. Which somebody might be saying that's pretty high. And it can be surprising because in large, people that perhaps, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, there's this idea that you can look at a person and tell whether they're an introvert or an extrovert. And that is not the truth. You really can't look at a person and tell, and you may not even be able to observe their behavior and tell if they are. And I'm going to get into that as well, because doing that can land you in a space to where you are misunderstanding who a person is. But to give you a little bit more of a backstory, I married an extrovert. And it wasn't on purpose. It was just like, for some reason, extroverts attract to introverts, and introverts somehow end up with an extrovert. And it's like they get together and then they get on each other's nerves the whole time. And because initially both of them are misunderstanding each other or trying to get the other one to be a little less introvert or a little less extrovert. Well, I married an extrovert. Then you add to that being in ministry. And there is a lot that comes with that personality type in ministry, especially a senior role like I'm in as an assistant pastor, associate pastor, or a pastor's wife. There is a lot that comes with that. And it's almost easier, and somebody might disagree, but it's almost easier for an extrovert woman to be married to an introvert man, because an extrovert man married to an introvert woman in ministry, you're definitely going to be misunderstood by people that don't have the time and patience to get to know your layers. And so I want to talk today about just, I don't want to get into the psychological or the scientific definitions and breakdowns of introverts and extroverts, because I think that that topic is pretty much exhausted and is kind of self-explanatory. And on a basic level, definition wise, extroverts are very outgoing and they're very much into social stimulation on any level and on most levels, whereas introverts are more so, they don't really look to be socially stimulated the way an extrovert would. Okay. And that's a basic level. And there's all sorts of little signifying characteristics and traits that are in between those very basic definitions. But I'm going to kind of close the gap today and speak for those that are introvert. And so I want to deal with some of the common misconceptions that are there when you're talking about introverts. And then I'm going to deal with the common misconceptions about introverts in ministry. So the first common misconception about introverts is that we are unfriendly, meaning that we're just unfriendly and we don't really like to talk. That's a main one. You don't like to talk, you're unfriendly, and that you don't like people. I'm going to put those three together. So you are unfriendly, you don't like to talk, and you really don't like people. And all three of those are false. You actually can be outgoing as an introvert, where you're not afraid to talk to people. You don't mind, socializing with people. You are friendly and you do enjoy conversation. It's just, let me explain the unfriendly piece. You're friendly, but you may not be open to extensive conversation that is not leading anywhere. Okay. So small talk is good, but small talk at a certain level can become exhausting for people that are introverts, because here's the thing. A lot of times, let me speak for myself. Part of what has created an introvert space for me is the way I process. And that is really the difference between introverts and extroverts. It is how you charge, recharge, and power down that determines what gets your engines going. For me personally, I need time and space to process a million different thoughts and a million different things that I'm resolving or working through. Like, my mental real estate is critical. And so sometimes a lot of conversation, or conversation that is not with purpose or intention, can feel exhausting, because this is the thing. As an introvert, because conversation means something different to me, I am literally storing everything you're saying. So when you are talking and when you're giving me details like your daughter was born in June and your middle child's name is Devin and you graduated from this high school in 1983 and your mom is a fourth stage cancer survivor, all of those things, when you're giving me those details, I am remembering every last single one, because conversation to me means something entirely different. Whereas an extrovert is powered up by social stimulation and they feel a certain way in conversation and laughing and socializing, but they're not always as into the details, because it's not really about collecting the details from the conversation. It's about how the conversation makes them feel. And so, whereas someone like me, if the conversation is small talk that goes from 10 minutes to now an hour, I'm pretty exhausted, because there's nothing in this conversation that I can take away and ponder and think on. It was all just surface. And it's not that we don't like to talk, it's what we like to talk about. It's the personality types that we like to talk to. We like conversation that has depth or that has meaning. And so also the bit about us being unfriendly, I think that sometimes, and I really am going to get to this part about the common misconceptions about introverts in ministry. sometimes people have a preconceived idea about how you should be or what you should be. And especially for someone like me who is married to an extrovert, and God forbid if they meet him first. He's the Walmart greeter of the year. I tell everybody, like, if he ever retired from anything else and just said, what else can I do? You can go be the Walmart greeter of the year because you don't know a stranger. You talk to everybody. Like, guys, literally, when we got married, it was the most shocking thing of my life that he literally just talks to everybody in the store. And I would ask him before we go into the store, can you not talk to people today? I know that sounds awful. I do, but I meant it. I really did mean it. Like, can you not? Because what would happen? This is what happens with a lot of extroverts. They start conversations because they like the way the conversation makes them feel, and they like rubbing, shoulders and meeting people. And then they make the people feel important or like they care what they're saying, but they really don't. And they walk away and leave them in the hands of a responsible introvert like myself. So I've gotten trapped in so many conversations about knitting and people's cats and, their hangnails and their plantar fasciitis. You guys, he starts these conversations and then leaves. And because conversation means something entirely different to me, I have to finish up a conversation that I didn't start and I'd rather not have because I don't want to hear about your cat. All of my mental real estate was preoccupied with like James 3. I read James 3 last night. It was so good. And I'm still processing it the next day, but I'm now trapped in a conversation about your cats or it's a bone in your back that slips sometimes. Like, these conversations put me over the edge when I didn't start them, but they find me. And that's the thing. Like, extroverts gravitate to introverts because we have friendly faces and we really look like we care. And we're not rude enough to say, no, I don't want to hear about your bunions today. So we're stuck in conversation. And because our mind collects all the information, we know now that your bunions hurt and that what they look like and when the surgery is. And this is what happens to us. And so, to my point, we're not unfriendly. It's not that we don't like to talk to people. And it's not that we don't like people. It's just that certain personalities serve our personality a little bit better. Certain conversations serve our personality a little bit better. Like, it's just how we charge and recharge. But it's not that we're unfriendly or that we don't like to talk or that we don't like people. All right. So those are just 3 common misconceptions about people that are introvert. Now I want to get into common misconceptions about introverts in ministry, because that's the whole point of this video in the first place. Is I need to rep for the people that have more of an introvert personality and that are in ministry and are called to it, and it's a part of your calling, okay? And so I want to deal with one of the misconceptions is that we're expected to be outgoing. Anytime you're in ministry and you're in any type of role where you are leading something, doing something, you're kind of expected to be outgoing, especially if it's a main leadership role. Like I said, like a pastor or like being over a women's group or over the ushers, you're kind of expected to be outgoing. And sometimes people are shocked if you're not, and they can be taken aback by that. And so I want to set the standard is that you don't have to be outgoing. You don't have to be the type of person that goes to every event or wants to go to every event or wants to have every conversation or wants to be in the crowd. You don't have to do that. And I would like to ask of the people listening that you not put that standard on someone just because they're in ministry and just because they are a leader. Second, people confuse, and this is a big one. If you don't hear anything else I say during this video, please hear this now. People confuse public persona with your actual persona or your private persona. What do I mean when I say that? They confuse who you are on the stage, in the leadership meetings, when you're giving directives, or even your social media presence with an idea that that's who you really are. And in some ways, let me tag onto this. Another common misconception is people do not expect you to have layers, meaning, let me use me for an example. Anyone who goes to my blogs, any of my social media presence, any of my writings, especially my writings, because I am a comical person and I am a humorous person, people get the idea that I am the life of the party. They don't understand that I run from the party. I'm not the life of the party. I'm the person who gets dressed to go to the party, gets to the door, and then decides, yeah, I don't feel like this. I'm the person that goes and takes everything back off and put on my bonnet and get popcorn and do something else. I'm definitely not the life of the party, but people get the idea that you're the life of the party because you're humorous and because I paint a great picture, because part of my gifting is creativity and writing, and people assume that you're an extrovert and you're outgoing. And I have had this happen more than once, that people take in a public persona, whether it's me speaking, even some of my videos. If you go and watch all of my YouTube videos, I may seem like, oh, she speaks well, she's funny, blah. And they expect you to be like that when they meet you, and I'm not. People are very surprised that I don't talk a whole lot in person, or I'm not loud and laughing and expressive or any of those. They're very surprised. And I've had people say, wow, I didn't know you were like this. But it's because they got another layer. Okay, so they read the book first, or they took in social media first, or they heard me speak somewhere first, and then we go out to eat and I'm at the table, kind of quiet or chill, very chill personality. And people are surprised, and God forbid they take in my husband first. They're like, well, good God Almighty, what's wrong with her? And I this has happened so many times. And so when I'm saying the public persona, who you are when you're preaching, teaching, speaking, getting up in front of members that you're leading, you rise to the occasion. It's not that you're being fake. I really need to say that. It's not that you're being fake or you're forcing yourself to be someone else. You're giving what the occasion calls for. And remember, I said people are not always comfortable with your layers. They don't understand that who you are on that stage or in that leadership meeting or when you're writing is authentically you, just as much as the private you that will sit there for an hour and not talk at all. They're both who you are, but it's what the occasion calls for. And people are not always they expect just this linear personality, that this is just who you are all the time. And that's really unfair. And it can be hard for people to process that difference. And I need to add this point. It is almost even more difficult when you are a spiritually gifted person, meaning maybe you have a prophetic gift, or maybe you are the type of person who, let's say you have different functions in the body. You have an apostolic anointing or evangelistic, and with that comes different processing as an extrovert or an introvert. For me, being a spiritually gifted person, meaning the Lord deals with me often in dreams, visions. He speaks to me prophetically. Sometimes I'm bearing things that I haven't told anybody about because they're just things God has shared with me or has impressed upon me. Some mornings I wake up and He speaks something to me that I'm pondering the whole day, or especially because I really need to put this in a ministry setting. In a ministry setting, when you are discerning and you're gifted, and especially when you're on assignment, your mind is processing what the Lord wants to do, what the Lord has done. For example, going out to eat after church and you've just been in a service where the Lord has been speaking or doing things. Sometimes you're still processing those things at the table when everybody is in conversation and expecting you to be in conversation. And because you're already an introvert, but you're also processing spiritual things, it can be greatly misunderstood as being withdrawn, standoffish, and it can be hard to overcome that perception. But it takes people that, number one, are comfortable enough with themselves not to take personal whatever you are or not that they expected. People that do not project their own insecurities because they're expecting something of you that you're not giving. And then people that are patient enough to organically learn or care to learn who you are. Okay. Another point that I want to add in there is being introverted in ministry. Sometimes you can be perceived as not being approachable. And I think that because of that, sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to bother you, or I don't want to, I didn't know what to say to you. And you can be perceived that way. And that's really not true. Just because you're introvert does not mean you don't want to be approached, you don't care to be approached. Because you're in ministry, and I need to say this, and I need to say this for the people that may be feeling that way, like, I don't want to bother this person, or they're not as talkative and I'm worried I'm going to bother them. When we say yes, and when we take the oath to serve the Lord and serve His people, we are expecting to be approached. We are expecting conversation and questions. We are expecting to serve you, because that is the commitment we've made to the Lord and to His people. And you are not a burden. You are not an adjutant. And you are not someone that we're like, would you please go away? Now, certainly there are moments that people can overstay their welcome and they come with the wrong intentions. And it's not about really having meaningful conversation or learning who you are or getting help. They want to dump, or they just want to monopolize your time with things that are not important or valuable. And it can be harder for an introvert to process that than an extrovert, but we have made an agreement with the Lord with our yes and our submission to serve you. So you're not getting on our nerves, and you're not making us feel like, would you go away? And I need to say that because peopling for us is different. But in terms of ministry, we've made a yes to where we expect to serve you. Okay. Next, I want to say this. People can mistake your persona for something else, such as dislike, or that something is wrong with them. And I kind of referenced this for me, and I need to go back to this point. Remember when I said sometimes it's easier for an extrovert man, an extrovert woman, to be married to an introvert man than it is for an extrovert man to be married to an introvert woman? That's in ministry, because there is a lot of grace for men in ministry that is not always the same for women in ministry, especially when you are a pastor's wife or you are second in command to a man. People have an idea of how the pastor should be and how the pastor's wife should be, how the deacon should be, how the deacon's wife should be, how the Sunday school teacher should be, how the Sunday school teacher's wife should be. Like, and it is not the same. Okay. And so most times, and I know somebody's not going to like me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There is a different measuring stick that women use than men. Okay. Men, they don't really care so much that you don't really seem approachable or super talkative. They don't care. Yeah, they don't give a rat's rump about it. Women care. Certain types of women care. And so if you have this super friendly, outgoing senior pastor and his wife is more quiet or reserved, she may be labeled as snotty or unfriendly, or, she's not like her husband. Well, of course she's not like her husband. I'm not like my husband. Nobody's like him. He's Friendly Frank of the year. Okay. He lives to talk to people about everything. It doesn't matter. It does. We can go to 8 stores in a day. He's going to talk to 3 people in each store about absolutely nothing. Nothing of value. He's just talking. And so sometimes the measuring stick for the pastor's wife or the men's ministries leader's wife or even the parking lot attendant who's a leader, his wife, the measuring stick that the women judge the men by is different than the measuring stick that they judge the women by. Because most times you're working against people's expectations of what they expected you to be or what they would like for you to be. And men and women make friends entirely different. Men don't have to really know each other. They can go hang out, have a good time, and there's no expectation for them to have to do it again or have a phone call after or hang out. Like, they don't care about that. Women are more so like, well, what does this mean now that we've had coffee? Are we best friends? Are we going to be hanging out all the time? Do you like me? And it's like you're working against a preconceived desire, whereas you have someone like me or like other introverts who don't necessarily need any type of company at all to feel satisfied. Me and my husband go to the gym together. This is my husband, y'all, that I've been married to. And we don't work out together. We're just at the same gym working out. He's over there, I'm over here. The reason for this is because he's talking the whole time. He's talking to me. He's taking phone calls. He's talking to that person over there and that person over there. And for me, I have an hour and a half of quiet where I don't have to talk and I'm getting myself together for the day. So if I don't need my husband's company all the time to feel satisfied, I may or may not be sitting somewhere thinking, boy, did I have a good time with Sister Brenda having coffee. We have got to do this again tomorrow. Y'all, I could do everything alone and be perfectly happy. I was like this as a kid. This isn't new. I have 4 siblings and I would play with them and then go away. I would play with them for 3 hours and then go away and play by myself for 4. Be just as happy and satisfied and at peace. I've been like this. And so I'm saying sometimes when people run into that, they say, well, does she not like me? Did I do something? Or you're saying this about other introverts in your church that you run into. And I can say 100% without talking to them, it's not you. It's nothing you've done. They're not sitting saying, oh, she get on my nerves. I don't like her. I wish she wouldn't come. It's not you. It is the way we process. It is the way we recharge. It is the way we refuel. It is how we live. And it has very little to do with you. I honestly do not sit and say, oh, I don't like her. I wish she wouldn't come over here. Never. I can't even think of like people I just don't like. Like, that's not in my mind. But what is in my mind is, ooh, I just want to sit somewhere and be quiet. I just want to be, I don't want the exercise of talking. So it's not you. And the last thing I want to say before I go to some of the possibilities and the solutions for feeling this way as an introvert in ministry, or perhaps you're working with one. Maybe your pastor is one, your pastor's wife, the person over the choir, the ushers, and maybe we're going to talk about it. But I want to point this out. Sometimes when a person in ministry is married to someone that has an opposite personality, it's very unfair to have the same expectation. Like if the husband is an extrovert and he's a talker, it's unfair to expect him to be like his wife who's not, and vice versa. Just because two people are one and they're in covenant do not mean that they are the same in their personality. As a matter of fact, God in his goodness and his stewardship puts us together so that we balance each other out. Because here's the thing. We could not have two of me and successfully pastor our church. And we certainly couldn't have two of my husband and successfully pastor our church. We literally balance each other out in our marriage, in our home, and in our church. And so the expectation for both people to be the same is very short-sighted. And it's without an understanding of what both personalities bring to the table when they're done correctly. All right. And so as I get ready to wrap this up, you might be saying, as an introvert in ministry or dealing with an introvert in ministry, how do you exist? And I want to say, answer the question, how do we exist? You exist authentically, but with elasticity, meaning be authentically who you are, but be open to change and be open to flexibility. There are times I don't feel like talking and I don't feel like dinner and I don't feel like hanging out. I just don't for multiple reasons. Some of which is just it's not how I charge or recharge, okay? It's not how I resolve the day by a lot of conversation or hanging out or crowds or concerts or parties or any. It's not my preference, but there are times that I understand it is important that I show up in a way to where I'm accessible. So there are times I override my natural inclination to be introvert, to show up for people and not to show up with an attitude or a sense of boredom, but to be present and to bring my personality and to enjoy the time. And then when the time is over, to say, okay, back to my cave I go. But I'm never going to just change who I am as a person to make people feel better or feel as if they can accept a different version of me. Part of your identity is understanding the way that God has made you and accepting that and understanding not everybody's going to understand it or love it. But that as long as you are consistent and being authentic, but also flexible to the reality that sometimes who you are may need to change a little bit for the occasion, for the moment, or for the person. It really does require a level of discernment to say, is God asking me to kind of bend here? Or is a person asking me to bend so that they feel better about who they are in reference to who I am? Okay. Next, I want to say be flexible, but be practical. You have to consider the flexibility also needs to yield to practicality. Is this going to be an ongoing thing? Am I now showing a side of me that's not sustainable just for acceptance or for the moment? It goes back to authenticity and also practicality. Like, is this even practical of what's being asked of me, stepping outside of who I am? Okay. Next, be honest about who you are and reiterate if necessary. That is my last point. And I want to say this. I often tell people, hey, my husband builds relationships like this and I build them like this. He's this type of person and I'm that type of person. And sometimes I have to lead with that because he's more extrovert, 9 times out of 10, they're going to meet him first. because he's circling, shaking hands, making friends all the time. Okay. And if they meet him first, and or let's say we go out to dinner and we go out in a group and whatever, I always am honest enough to say, yeah, I'm a little more quiet. I'm a little more chill. I build relationships organically over time. I'm really honest about my personality and who I am. And when I said in the point, reiterate if necessary, if you feel like someone is struggling with the side of you that builds slower, okay, you have to reiterate, hey, yeah, this is the type of person I am. Notice I'm not saying change it to make them feel better. What I'm saying is be honest and reiterate who you are as a person so that you set the expectation that this isn't you. It's me. It's how I build. It's how I get to know you. It's how you get to know me is that I'm a little bit slower, but it's slow and it's sure because conversation to me means something different. Presence to me means something different. How I process means something different. Like you're explaining who you are, and somebody might be saying, well, you shouldn't have to explain who you are. Well, I need to say this. Being in ministry and caring for people and being submitted to God means you care about them. And if you're trying to reach them, you should care about how they perceive you if they are in your care. And so it's not that you are over explaining who you are, you're creating a path for a relationship to be built that can last by setting a standard and an expectation of what they can really expect from you. And so it's more responsible and good stewardship of your call, your purpose, your placement than it is explaining and over explaining who you are. And I really needed to say that for somebody who's saying, how do I exist in this space? Or how do I exist with someone I'm serving with or serving under that is more introvert? Okay. And so listen, I know that I always say this, and I have to give this as a disclaimer on every video. My videos are short. They are summaries of a topic. This topic is vast. It can go on and on and on and on and on. And certainly there are points you might be saying, well, what can she didn't address this. She didn't address that. Maybe at some point I'll do a part 2 if the response from this is pretty good or if there's questions. But I did want to set the standard and kind of create a space of understanding for people who are serving with introverts or introverts that are serving, and hopefully creating a sense of understanding and conversation surrounding the topic so that we can just continue to like knock the ball out of the park in terms of the kingdom of God, understanding each other, building with each other. I'm pretty sure in that group of 12 disciples that there were all sorts of personalities and somebody had to be an introvert, but they all rocked with Jesus. As a matter of fact, I like to think maybe Jesus was a bit of both. All right. He'd hang out with everybody and then he'd go away and be with the Father. And that's certainly who I am. And so I love you guys. Please like, subscribe, share, and give me your thoughts on this video. Okay. It was good talking again.